Hello and welcome to Better Than Art School. This is a portrait drawing demo. I'm going to talk a little bit about portraits generally first, how to position a portrait, a little bit about likeness, and then I'm going to actually draw the drawing you're seeing on this first slide. Okay, so one of the first things I want to call your attention to in a portrait is the portrait person aware of you? Is the person looking at you? Are they looking away? Are they meeting your stare, or are they looking away? That's something to think about. It's a very different kind of portrait if the person's in conversation with you, if they're aware of you. Okay, now that said, this is a head study. This is Lucian Freud, one of his sons, and what he's doing here is just basically studying the planes of the head with paint. It's not the most interesting portrait, and if I put this painting next to it, you see why. So there's three main axis points through a portrait. There's the axis of the body, the axis of the head, and the axis of the eyes. On the portrait on the head study that I just mentioned, the Freud painting, on our left, it's really kind of boring because the head is parallel to the picture plane, the body is parallel to the picture plane, the eyes the most interesting part because they're at a different angle. The famous painting on our right, The Girl with the Pearl Earring by Vermeer, that one's a little more interesting. Her body's turned away from us, the head's turning back, and the eyes are looking at us. So it's kind of like those moments in high school when you pass somebody that you have a crush on and you hope that they're going to turn back and look at you as you're passing. That's kind of the feeling of this painting. Okay, so that's two different kind of extremes on axis points. I'm going to use this painting by John Singer Sargent to illustrate this axis idea a little further. Okay, so you might say this is an overly posed portrait. He looks very fancy. He looks like he's in conversation with us. Very dapper gentleman. Okay, but let's look at the axis points in this portrait. So first, the axis of the body. The body is going back away from us at a diagonal. Okay, that's the first thing. And then his shoulders are swinging out towards us, and his hips are swinging into the couch and away from us a little bit. So that animates the body a little bit too. The body has some torsion in it. It has some movement to it. Remember, the first axis point is through the body. The second axis point is through the head. And in this case, his head is also at a diagonal, but it's parallel to the picture plane. And then his eyes, the third axis point is the eyes, and the eyes are the eyes, I should say. The eyes are staring directly at us. Okay. Now here's a more reserved portrait. It's by Andrew Wyeth, but some of the same stuff is happening just in a more subtle way. His body is turned away from us just ever so slightly. His head is turned to meet our gaze, and his eyes are looking right at us, right into your soul, you might say. One hand is tucked under his arm, the other hand is over the arm, so that adds a little bit of interesting asymmetry to it. So portraits historically aren't arbitrary. So if this is a painting by Ang, and this gentleman, this fellow, has a Colosseum behind him, if you can notice that little detail, and that's not arbitrary. It wasn't that he happened to be standing in front of the Colosseum. This is telling the viewer of the portrait that this man is classically trained, okay, that he's a classically educated man. Then above that Colosseum in the background, you can see some dark clouds. The dark clouds are telling us that he's a romantic, that he has strong emotions. Romantic in the philosophical sense. Okay, this is sort of a bridge between a painting and a portrait. It's called Aristotle, Contemplating the Bust of Homer. It's by Rembrandt. And what's actually happening here is profound because Aristotle is a man of thought, a man of science, the first biologist, I guess, in some ways. And he's contemplating Homer, who is the creator, the ultimate creator. He's the one that wrote the Iliad and the Odyssey, so far as we know. But then if you look closer, there's this silver fancy sash thing that Aristotle's wearing. And if you can see it, there's a little locket down there. And if you look closely, especially if you see the painting in person, you can see it's a little portrait of Alexander the Great, who is Aristotle's student. And then, so if you take the locket of Aristotle, the locket of Alexander the Great, Aristotle, the living man, and then Homer, which is the bust, there's a triangle there that gives you every type of person. The person of action and conquest, like Alexander the Great, the person of contemplation, like Aristotle, and then the person of creation and creative endeavor. That would be Homer. Okay, so that's just a little bit about portraits. Now I'm going to do the portrait demo, okay? All right, so I'm drawing this portrait from a photo of my girlfriend, and she's on my computer screen as I draw her. So here we go. All right, I'm using Vine Charcoal. Vine Charcoal is a great thing to do the initial construction of a face with because it is very easy to erase. I apologize about the camera holding. I get better at it as we go, but for now it's a little shaky. Okay, so you get the axis point of the whole head. Her head is at a tilt, and I want to get that first, and then put a center line down the whole head. That's the first thing you do. The face is symmetrical. Okay, so you have to do a center line down the middle to remind yourself of that. Then you do eyes, nose, mouth. You just do 3 lines, and those lines are, they're not equally placed, but they're all parallel to each other. So if the head's on a tilt, all 3 axis points are on a tilt as well. Okay? Then after I drew the 3 points, now I'm just kind of blocking in the basic shape ideas. I'm going to go into much more detail, but for now I'm just kind of getting the basic shapes here. I'm looking at planes. So the cheek marks a difference between the front plane of the face, where the nose and the eyes and the mouth are, and then that side plane. And if you're drawing a frontal view of the face, you want to make sure you indicate the side planes on either side. And if you're doing a 3/4 view, you'll just see one side plane. If you're doing a profile, you'll only see one side plane. But this is more or less a frontal view. And so you can see 2 side planes. You can do little ellipses to get that. Now I'm just blocking in the major shapes. That's all I'm doing here. I'm just getting the basic facial proportions. And it's all with Vine Charcoal, so it's very easy to erase. I can take a chamois or my hand and just make it go away very quickly. And in the course of the drawing, if you draw with pencils or with charcoal, either one, this Vine Charcoal is going to disappear. Okay, let's go a little bit further. So now I'm going to do some facial proportions. So what I did just then is I'm dropping lines down from the middle of the eyes, and that's where the ends of the mouth are going to be. And now I'm going to draw the mouth a little bit here. So the mouth is it's on a rounded form. So the palate is rounded. So when you draw the center line between the mouth, make sure it's rounded. Now I'm doing the letter M for the nose. That's a shorthand way to do the nose. And I'll do that again when I do the more extended drawing of the nose. But for now, I'm still just in that blocking in phase. I'm getting sort of the form shapes of the cheeks. I'm trying to establish which planes are front, which planes are side planes, and between planes that kind of help you transition between those. I'm just going through doing that. This is all kind of spatial thinking. I'm trying to do a drawing in such a way that the drawing doesn't look flat on the surface. I'm just blocking in the shape of the eye, once I'm pretty sure I got the distances right. The brow ridge also has an M shape, so the nose kind of has an M shape, especially if the light's coming from above. The mouth has a stretched out M shape, and the brow ridge also has an M shape. It's a more subtle M shape, but if you get those 3 M's in the face, your face will have more form to it. So this is still very preliminary. This isn't super detailed yet. This is just me figuring out where things are, what the basic shapes are. All right, so after the first little video you saw, I got to the first image there, and the second video, I got to the second image. They're both preliminary. They're both kind of messy. I'm just trying to establish, like I said, the front planes, the side planes, the major forms of the features. Okay, now I'm going to get into detail work. So let's do the mouth first. I'm just kind of erasing, softening it a little bit. Now, like I said, the mouth is on a rounded form, so it should be not a straight line. It should be kind of a slightly arching line because your palate is a rounded palate. I'm kind of dropping some lines down to make some comparisons between the nose and the mouth. Usually if the light's coming from above, most people, their top lip falls into shadow and the bottom lip comes out into the light. Like I mentioned before, the top lip is kind of a stretched out M shape. And in this case, the head is cocked to one side a little bit, and one side of the mouth is stretched a little bit more than the other, so it's slightly asymmetrical. Okay, this is, I'm going to be drawing the nose now. So start with the M shape, letter M. Okay, that gives you the underplane of the nose, and then it sets you up for the three other planes of the nose, so the middle plane and the two side planes. In a frontal view, you'll see all four of these planes. You'll see the middle plane, the underplane, the two side planes. I'm just getting my angles right, making sure that everything's parallel as I'm doing this. And this is the basic construction of a nose. Now, inside of this construction, or on top of this construction, you can start to draw the individual features of the nose, what makes that person's nose, the idiosyncrasies of that person's nose. But for now, you just want to get the basic construction, and you want to make sure that you can see that the front plane comes in front, and that the side planes recede a little bit, they fall away. Okay, now I'm going to do the eyes. So start with the form of the eyes, which is kind of a circle. Okay, it's a sphere. And there's actually, the eyes are much bigger than they look. Most of your eye is protected by your face. So it sits underneath, behind the forehead and behind the cheeks a little bit. That's to protect us, so when we fall at our face, our eyes don't explode, which is a horrible thing to think about. So here I'm drawing rounded forms, and then I'm wrapping the lids around those forms. Okay, once I got that sphere, then I can find out where the shadows are. It helps me understand what's receding and what's popping back out again. Initially, the shading you're seeing is I'm mostly just shading here to kind of understand. I'm just trying to shade to tell myself, okay, this is falling into shadow, and I'm usually just going the direction of the light or a form direction, like a direction of the basic form that I'm trying to follow. So it's one of those two things, or maybe both, depending on the drawing. If you want to keep it simple, just make all your hatching lines following the light. Okay. Now what I'm doing is, this is the part of the face that a lot of people have a hard time with. They can draw the features, the eyes, the nose, the mouth, but when they get to the places in between, they get confused. And so what I would say is to try to see the forms. Try to see what's a front plane and side plane again, what's coming forward, what's receding, and then try to find the little egg shapes and little forms you see inside of it. With the cheeks, it kind of ramps down from the nose, it gets round about parallel to the nose, and then there's a little tail that goes up behind the eye. Okay, so when you do the hair, start with the value first. Don't draw every little hair. Just like when you do a tree, you draw the basic shape of the tree and then you shade it, and then you start drawing the leaves. The same thing with hair. Keep the hair simple. The hair is almost always darker than the face, and just draw it like that. Just draw with value first. This is a little further along, and I'm just keep on working on the hair. And as you can see, what I'm doing here is I'm shading between things. I want my shading to go outside the lines a little bit. So when I'm shading the hair, it also goes into the neck. And that way I'm not doing like a coloring book where I'm just coloring things in. I'm letting the shadow move in between. This is the finished drawing, and actually at the very front, the very top of this lecture, you can see a further back view of this. But I hope you enjoyed this, and thank you, and I'll see you next time. And there's a little puppy. Thanks.